You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric. I am flying solo today, and pardon the pun, because I am talking to a former American Air Force veteran, Adam DeRito, who is our American political correspondent. Adam, you're very welcome back to the Irish Political Roundup.
Well, it's always a pleasure to come on and talk to the people of Ireland and coming on your podcast and giving you guys a great insight what's going on in the US. So thanks for having me on.
It is our absolute delight to have you on and keeping it, because where else do we get this information? Because certainly not
Google.
from mainstream media.
Yeah, Google, which is also a problem, right? So yeah, no, it's good that we're connecting our countries through these political conversations because the US political system is very complicated to understand, and I think unless you have a good insight to somebody who actually is involved in US politics like I am, it's kind of hard to differentiate the truth from, the cannon fodder. So
And Adam, just to remind our viewers and listeners that you are also the author of the DeRito bill.
yes, I
DeRito
am.
Act.
So I work with a lobbyist here in Washington, D.C., and I'm the author of the DeRito Act, which is basically a way for reforming our military to make sure that military officers, NCOs, or military members cannot retaliate against another member for reporting sexual assault, harassment, or misconduct by falsifying their mental health records, which ironically is not currently illegal in the U.S. military and has caused a lot of problems in the last several decades. And it's something that I'm fighting for to change for here in the U.S. government and the U.S. military. And I'm hopefully under the new leadership that we have here, I'm a lot more hopeful that this bill is going to get passed. But it's once again, it's a political game, but we're a lot more hopeful this year.
So that brings me on to, we talk about the corruption and changing government and having people in charge.
Mhm.
That brings me on. You have a great portfolio. You were a veteran of the Air Force. You're in the Army now. You're also working in the energy sector. And I probably get all this wrong. This is all in my head. The energy
No,
sector,
you're right. That's what I do.
the oil and gas. I got it there.
Mhm.
Look,
Yep.
oil and gas. You also work, and you're also the vice president of the veterans in America.
Yep.
And you're also in the Republican Party in Colorado.
Yep.
And
I wear a lot of hats
yeah, and you're also a farmer, and I get
in my free
well,
time. Yep.
but you're also a teacher as well. How do you fit all this
I
in?
am.
Teacher.
I don't know. Yeah, so I'm a substitute teacher here for St. Mary's Catholic School in Greeley, Colorado, and I do that, every now and then when they call me in, where a teacher calls in sick. But it's great. I love my faith, and I love the kids, and I love helping out my local community, and it's a great way to stay involved in the community and help raise the next generation of Americans that are going to replace me.
So my next question is also President Donald J. Trump. He had an executive order where
Mhm.
he dismantled the Department of Education. Now,
Yeah,
he
finally.
said that he was always going to do that.
Mhm.
As a teacher, can you explain to the Irish audience why that was important?
Oh, it's so important. The problem is that the Department of Education was created in, I think, the 70s and the 80s, and we've spent over $3 trillion, and Americans have just gotten dumber. Right. It has not actually improved education or test scores or math abilities or science abilities. We have allowed very bad educators to be involved in the system. If anyone has been paying attention to the U.S. news lately, there are multiple accounts of teachers in public schools who are sexually assaulting children. And we are not vetting our teachers. We are not holding them accountable to the standard. I am very thankful that I did not have any of these issues. I grew up in New Jersey. New Jersey, in my opinion, has the best state-run public education system in the country, right? But that model is not around the rest of the 49 states, right? So the problem is that it's a giant money laundering operation. The Department of Education collects all these taxpayer dollars and gives out all this money, but we're not actually hiring good educators who care about educating children. They're more about, governmental policies. I mean, even yesterday in Denver, all the teachers were protesting out in, the Denver state capitol, claiming that, well, we need to keep funding for the DOE. Why? Well, because of the teachers. Okay, but what have you done? Have you improved test scores? Well, no. So why should we fund that? If you're making kids dumber and kids can't do math, why would we continue this process? And they said, well, we shouldn't be cutting the Department of Education. We need to cut other things. Okay, well, what do you want to cut? I don't know. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a statistician, but we should cut something else. These teachers who are claiming to be the educators of our children don't even know how the government works. They don't know what's going on in the state, and they just want money. Money for what? Well, I need to get paid more money. Why would I pay you more if you're bad at your job?
Yeah.
You know, and what's also, we should pay our teachers more for sure, but we should have less teachers. We need more teachers that we can pay better money on the state side and educate our children on the basic things of math, science, reading, literacy, you know, English, social studies, you know, what I grew up on. But when a kid can't do basic math and requires a calculator, when a kid can't read at their reading level, what does that say about our education system? Oh, well, we just need to spend more. Well, throw money at what? We're just giving money to give money for money. You know, it's time for accountability, and this is why it's so important that education becomes privatized. You know, that we can have school choice if we want to. You want to go to private school, you want to go to Catholic school, you know, whatever, that's fine. But also, it should be up to the states individually, because this is another thing about our Constitution. You are not allowed, or you're not afforded the right just for an education. That's not in our Constitution, right? So if it's not defined in the US Constitution, then that power must be given to the state. So this is actually a great constitutional argument. Since you don't have the right to education listed in the Constitution, just like we have the right to bear arms, we can have a gun. That's guaranteed to me in my Constitution, but my right to an education is not guaranteed by the Constitution. And if that right is not specifically defined, this is why the power needs to be handed over to the states individually. So the states, just like the state of New Jersey, right? They have a great public education system. Arkansas, absolutely terrible. Texas, not so good. California, even worse, right? So they should be able to integrate with other states, you know, come up with the best education system for them, but also held accountability. If your test scores aren't high, and this also goes to corruption, where teachers were giving answers to the federal, the state test, the SATs, you know, the Scholastic Achievement Test to get into college. Teachers were just giving answers to the kids when they were taking these tests just so they could get into college. But they don't even know what they're doing. So now we're sending kids to college who aren't even qualified to go to college, and then we put them in this college system that costs, you know, the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars to send these kids to school when they can't boil a potato. You know what I mean? So there needs to be standards. Like when I took these tests, I had to study a lot. I had to know how to read. I had to know how to write. I had to know how to do math. And even that was a struggle. But I worked my butt off and I got into those systems. But I've seen the Department of Education continuously fail since the 15 plus years I've been out of the public federal education system, you know, in the United States. So I think that by cutting the Department of Education and reforming it completely, and obviously we'll still be able to have, you know, student loans are important, special needs are important, and Donald Trump's not cutting any of those.
No.
But he's cutting the fraud, waste, and abuse in our education system in order to hold the states accountable for educating their citizens. And at the end of the day, like I said, education should be based on a meritocracy. And this is actually, even what Germany does is very interesting, right? So Germany, they mandate that all of their kids take this test, right? By the time they graduate high school. I forget the German name for it because I haven't taken German in a few years. But if you're dumb and you don't qualify to go to university, you don't go to university. You go into the trades, right? You go learn how to be a plumber, a welder, you know, a carpenter, things like that. You go into public service, you be a nurse or, you know, in healthcare services. So what they do is, and I think it's a genius system where you are placed into a job or a career field moving into your adult life that you are going to succeed at, right? It's not forcing somebody to go to a university to get a degree and then they can never get a job, which is what happens in the US. Everyone should go to college. Well, we send everybody to college, but you have kids who can't read. And then they're in college and then now like, well, I don't have a job. Well, of course you don't have a job because you have no idea what you're doing. But we just gave you this frivolous piece of paper. Now you're in $100,000 worth of debt, and we still don't have electricians to build our next buildings. But you might have been a great electrician because you can use hand tools, right? So I think modifying our education system, we're actually encouraging young men and women to go into the trades where you might not be a university professor, you might not be an engineer, but I bet you can build a house, or I bet you can pave a road, and all these other things. So I think our education system is going to start shifting towards that direction, which I think is great because I'm a blue collar worker. I still work in the trades, but I'm also an engineer. Like I'm very blessed. Like I'm somewhat intelligent, I think. I can do basic math, but I can go out and spin a pipe wrench and wear a hard hat and put on my steel toe boots, right? Because our infrastructure requires men and women like me to still do those jobs because we still need electricity. We need heat. We need manufacturing of vehicles and bridges and roads and things like that. So we can't just send everybody to university and everyone just be a TikTok influencer and let our infrastructure crumble behind us, right? I mean, look at the Irish. When the Irish came in, and this is where my great-grandfather came in to the U.S. in the 1920s, they built New York City. right? They built the Empire State Building. They built the George Washington Bridge, right? And it wasn't the college educated nerds doing math on paper. Yeah, they wrote off on the plans, but they weren't the ones out there welding and riveting and things like that. And we need to make sure that we're all not going to be university professors. We're all not going to be digging ditches, so to speak. But we need to make sure that Americans are equally distributed within the population moving forward, so our country doesn't implode on itself. And dismantling the Department of Education to get rid of that model is one of the first steps to doing that.
And, we say this here all the time in Ireland, that the educational system is an industry. And now we don't have enough, as you said, plumbers, electricians, welders, or even builders, or any of the trades. So now the Irish government, we have a department for, I can't remember, the names escape me, and it's another educational department for apprenticeships. And that's, as you said, not everyone is academic.
Nope.
No, and not everybody should be academic, because you have to have the balance.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny. I was talking, like I said, my one friend I discussed who lived in Ireland for a few years, she was even telling me, she's like, I couldn't find a single Irish plumber when something went wrong in my house. I had to call the Polish immigrants over to fix my house. Right. But this is a problem in Ireland too, where there is not enough tradesmen. And the Irish have been known for that in the past. You know what I mean? The Irish were very good at the stained glass, building production, architecture. And now you're relying on immigrants who still have those trades and those skills to keep your country running. Right? Because everyone in Ireland once they graduate, university, they're leaving the country and they're going to New Zealand or Australia. They're not even staying in Ireland because there's no incentive there.
My daughter is in Australia, but she's coming back in June. But she's in
Right.
Australia. No, she's a doctor. Half of all the doctors have gone to Australia, and then we're importing other doctors who may not be, they're not as educated as our own, which we are exporting, and we're importing doctors who aren't as qualified or experienced as our own well-educated doctors and engineers and everybody else. So we have that problem. You cannot get a plumber, you cannot get an electrician. They're going to be the new millionaires. And our educational system has got it. Oh, it's more worried about points. And what did your children get in their leaving cert? Go to university. Oh, if you want a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or going into IT. Oh God, oh, what about sending?
I mean, those people are important, but they're not what keeps society running.
No.
You know what I mean? Ireland gets pretty cold. You need heat, you need electricity, you need insulation in your house, right? But like, if you can't keep your infrastructure running and relying on some nerd who's a lawyer, oh, thank you for the lawyer degree, but that's not keeping the country running. And we have the same issue in America, is that most of our, and this is the illegal immigrant argument, right? Is that, a lot of Hispanic Americans, or illegal immigrants here in the United States, they are keeping our infrastructure running. And a lot of these Democrats, we need the illegal immigrants because who's going to run the farms and who's going to build the roads? Well, maybe you should incentivize Americans to continue being blue collar workers the way this country was built. That whole cowboy monoculture, that most international people, they all think we wear cowboy hats and cowboy boots. I mean, I do because I live in Colorado. But you know what I mean? Like, there's this persona of the American West. That's the persona of America internationally. But I will tell you that over half the people I interact with don't know how to use a hammer. They don't know how to use a tape measure. Right. So it's concerning. Right. And I'm very blessed that my grandfather and my father rose me to be a man and know how to build. I built my own house. Right. I know how to do these. I built everything that you see in this room right now. Right. But I didn't have to hire anybody to do a lot of these things. Right. And it's I'm a unique person in that aspect. But this is what's killing Western society as a whole, not just America, but in Ireland as well, is that we need to encourage that citizens can equally participate in their country by doing what they're good at, not necessarily what they're forced to do.
Yes. And bringing back common sense.